Thank you. Hey guys, good morning. Good morning. Oh, come on, wake up a little. I'm done. I got applause, I'm happy. Okay, so what I want to talk about today a little bit is gearing up for peak season, what we call peak season, I guess, in international freight, what most people call busy season. But before I get started, I want you guys to visualize something, right? Does everybody here have internet at their house? You guys are really quiet. You have internet at your home? Yeah, okay. So I have internet too. We're not so different, you and I. When you move, right? When you first move and you don't have internet at your new apartment, right? Which is like a weird, it's like I'm not a prepared guy, and you'll see this later on. When you first move and your internet isn't up and running, if the guy from Bezek or Hot or whoever you call up to get installed with internet calls you up, at least calls me up, let me talk about me, not you. If I'm on the phone with my dying grandmother and the guy from the internet calls me up to install internet, I will hang up on my grandmother, feel very, very bad, but you just really, really want that internet, right? You need it because you're living somewhere without Wi-Fi. At the same time, if you call a bunch of providers before you move in somewhere, right, and you choose one of them, 2 days later, somebody calls, and they keep on calling, and you're on the phone, and they keep on calling, and you keep on calling, you get so upset with them, right? They just keep on beeping in, they drive you nuts. And that difference, I think, right there between when you need the Wi-Fi or when you don't need the Wi-Fi is what this entire day is about, right? It's about creating that need so that you can reach out to people when you need to reach out to them. First, my name is Eytan Buchman. I'm the head of marketing at Freightos. Freightos is basically an Expedia for international freight. This is actually me. I've gotten less cool since. My job is to make international freight sexy, which is not so easy. I also host a podcast called Marketers and Capes, which is basically a short form marketing podcast. You're welcome to check it out afterwards. And most importantly, I have charts. I have very, very fancy charts right now. These are months. If you visualize your prospect, right, B2B prospect, this is kind of what his level of busyness is throughout the year, okay, or the second half of the year. It starts in July when we're all kind of bored. August, most people go on vacation, especially in Europe, right? Europe, they're basically all from over here to over here. But over here, they start getting busy from personal time, right, hanging out with their kids, and they keep on going, right? Things start to get busy until November, and then they're on vacation in December, so they're super busy and you can't get in touch with them. Right? This is where our prospects are, and one of the biggest mistakes around peak season is starting off, or around busy season, is starting off with the idea that it's about me selling, right? Because it's never about you selling, it's about other people buying, right? So these are the people, it's not how busy are you, and how busy are you trying to sell, it's how busy is the person that you're trying to reach. The second parameter that you need to take into account is need. How much do the users, or the people that you're trying to sell, actually need the product that you're trying to sell to them? Right, so right over here is a little bit of a magic spot, right? Because right over here, the level of busyness that they have is under the level of need. They need you more than they're busy, so it's easier to sell. The busier they get, the harder. This isn't particularly sophisticated. I'm a marketer, not like whatever. Somebody does something interesting, right? So the busier they are, the harder it is to sell to them. What's interesting is that you do not have the power to change how busy they are. That's fixed. What you do have the power to do is change their demand, to change how much they actually need you. That leaves two options, right? A, you can make them need you more, right? As soon as you manage to raise that level of need, then suddenly there's a couple of extra months or a couple of extra weeks that you can actually get to people. And that's a really, for me at least, I actually have to admit, I've never thought about this from a theoretical level until Billy and the team asked me to speak. And I was happy I did because this is it's not a particularly difficult concept, but just knowing that I actually, during the season, it's not that I have to sell harder or I have to market harder, is that I have to increase the demand that people actually have during that period of time. What that means is, do you have the capability to increase need? Right? Do you have the capability in September or October to make somebody want it more than they did in the past and make sure that you're above that level of busyness? If you do, that's great. Right? Go ahead and do it however you can. If you can't do it, that leaves you back over here, which is okay too, but it means that you have to prepare really, really early on in order to actually close any deals or bring in any MQLs during the course of the actual busy season. Now, one important thing is that last minute never works. This is something that I've learned myself way too many times. It doesn't work for a couple of reasons, right? If in the middle of Q3 or towards the end of Q3, you're trying to come up with ways to get more leads in there, you're probably going to end up doing more damage than good. At least I've done more damage than good. The first reason is that really good marketers implement. So if during July you come up with something smart that you can do, right? You can tweak your funnel, you can come up with a good webinar, you can come up with a good piece of content, you can change your UI, you can implement a new word-of-mouth referral program. You're not waiting until Q3 to do that, right? As soon as we come up with ideas, we implement it and we iterate it. And we can do that because we're marketing, right? There's a ton of data there, and all you need to do is iterate, and you take something and you make it happen. So by the time you get to the end of Q3, you're kind of out of like amazing ideas. So maybe there's like small iterations that you can make, but desperation to drive more leads, plus trying to come up with new ideas, can very frequently just create terrible ideas that you'll end up regretting later. The other thing is, right, like you can't suddenly scale up. Sales guys, when they're busy, they can suddenly, or when they know that they have to hit targets, or when their commission structure changes, they'll go from making 50 calls a day to 75 calls a day. We can't do more marketings, right? We're marketing at max capacity, right? You could stay extra, you could write some more articles, but that's not really going to move the needle. The last thing, and this is the one that I regret the most doing ourselves, Hail Marys, right? If in the last week of a quarter, you create a promotion code and you suddenly send out a 20% discount to all your prospects, then you end up screwing yourself. Apple did this too, right? Last year, Apple changed their trade-in program, which almost every single person in the industry called an act of desperation. And you feel so bad for Apple because they have spent decades building this incredible luxury brand, right? They put everything that they do into creating a brand that makes it okay to shell out $1,000 for a cell phone. And then they do this one stupid move that comes out of desperation, so the Motley Fool thinks it's okay, but it's a dumb move from a marketing perspective, because you end up cheapening the brand with this stupid thing like, hey, take my phone, take my phone, take my phone, and suddenly you don't want that phone because Apple is really about, give me my phone, give me the phone, not take the phone. So you have to stay away from that last minute thing, right? So what can you actually do? You have to start early. So the first very cheery line here is basically that if you're only starting to think about this right now, you're kind of screwed anyway, so sorry, goodbye. But also, like, you need to start, like, right now is when you start preparing for busy season, not next month. Right? In the beginning of January is when you should start preparing for busy season. Right? So the first thing is you really have to start funnels early. Start them really, sorry, maybe I guess HubSpot's gonna be pissed off at me saying funnels. You have to start non-funnels very, very early, back in January or February. Our #1 performing piece of content, we do this survey, there's a little freight, I'm sorry. We do this survey of freight companies around the world. We take the top 20 freight companies every single year. We rank them in terms of how well they're successfully marketing online. And we put this report together. And we put this report out intentionally in January, when people are back from their vacations and they're bored and they're just getting started with the year. And we push it in front of people on LinkedIn and we pay pennies, literally pennies for leads. Our average cost for C-level leads at some of the largest companies in the world, like DB Schenker, Panalpina, you guys don't know them, but they're really, really big, I promise. These companies, we end up paying $18 per lead in January and February. And as you get to September and October and the environment becomes more saturated, they're not looking at LinkedIn as much. They're not downloading leads as much. You have to start really, really early, and then you push them into the nurture funnel, and you keep on going. And you aim that cadence of the nurture funnel to start to really kick off into sales in Q3. So we will take people in Q1, and we won't even put the salespeople in touch with them when they first download content, and we'll keep on trickling out more in-depth content. Only in Q2 will we start to gear up towards sales and product-related content, and Q3 is when we'll really amp it up. And then we'll wait until they know the product, they know it really, really well, and the last 2 or 3 weeks of November, when they're starting to try to figure out how they can use their budget, is when we'll call them up and we'll say, hey, let's close this before the end of the year, because I know that you have excess budget. So I think everybody probably knows this, start early. Right? The other thing is that you don't need to be slaves. Just because B2B is busy during Q4 doesn't mean that you need to be slaves to that as well. You can create your own busy season. So there's a couple of different ways to do that. The first is just knowing your industry backwards and forwards. And you figure out, what are the trade shows that every single person goes to? Right? So if you have your, I don't know, if you're in the Salesforce space, right, and everybody goes to Dreamforce, wait a week until after Dreamforce, when suddenly people have a little bit more time, and hit them up there. Right? Don't be slaves to that Q4 idea. And when you speak to people, you can say, I don't want to wait until you're running out of budget in Q4. I want to help you spend your budget in a more intelligent manner, base it around their actual industry and their actual performance, and hit them up when it makes sense, not when it makes sense for you. Early worm them, right? So like, tell them, early worm gets the bird. Instead of giving you a Q4 discount, I'm going to give you my Q4 discount in Q2. Or Q1 if you're whatever on a different financial tracking, right? But basically come up with ideas. How can I bring their busy season earlier so that I'm getting to them, whoa, really far back. So I'm getting to them over here rather than waiting until things are busy and it's much harder to do. Getting lost here. Okay. The last thing is like you can actually come up with funnier ideas around that peak season. We're sending out holiday cards, or hopefully I'm having a big fight with the people on my team who don't like the idea, but we might, if I successfully push this through, send out holiday cards in August, right? And say like, hey, we're not gonna wait until you're too busy. We know you don't really want to hear from a freight technology company around Christmas time. We're not big on bows, we're not big on wrapping paper, but we're deciding in the middle of August to say, hey, thanks for being a customer, we really, really like you. Or thanks for being a prospect, we're really happy that you follow our stuff. And get in front of their faces instead of waiting for everybody else to send those cards. The one exception of when you want to be in the mass is when people send out those GDPR emails and you want to get buried, right? But besides that, stick out. If you are built around a holiday cadence schedule, right, your Independence Day email should never go out on July 3rd or July 4th, right? You push it early or you push it late, but get around the rush when everybody else is doing it. Other thing, not all quarters are created equally, right? So if you have ad spend, always front load that ad spend, or I don't know what the opposite of front load is, backload ad spend. Always make sure that you're taking your ad spend and you're pushing it in places that actually make sense, right? The one mistake to do that you don't want to do on PPC is just to shut it off, because if you shut it off and then turn it back on, Google will hit you forever and it'll take forever to get back to your right conversion rates. We switch a lot more of our ad spend towards buy intent keywords during Q3 or Q4, right? When people are actually looking for those solutions, we'll throw more spend into the buy intent and we'll take a little bit more spend away from the nurture flows, because we know that if we want to actually try to nail leads this quarter or the next quarter, we need to switch to the buy intent. Make sure that you don't kill your Q1, right? You don't want to turn off your leads, turn off all your nurture funnels, and then in Q1 you end up being way, way worse off than you were in Q4. And model right. This is something big that we discovered at Freightos. I'm sure everybody else in our industry knew it. We're tech people, not freight people. But there's a big peak season because of Chinese New Year in February. And we had no clue about it. And every single year, our Q2 was just getting destroyed. And it took us like 2 years to pick up with the fact that like, hey, this industry like has its own unique quirks. And we have to come up with the right model in order to actually accommodate. Okay, how do you actually, during peak season or during busy season, when you actually need to start selling, how do you actually start selling? And jujitsu, which is just like writing those words, is the closest I got to any athletic activity in the past like month. Jujitsu, from the little that I know from Karate Kid maybe, is all about taking like other people's efforts and like turning them into like helping you. So just 2 ways to do that. If people are actually thinking about a busy season, right? If that's what's on their mind, because you're selling to other B2B companies. And those B2B companies are also really interested in making sure that they take advantage of busy season. So educate them about how they can manage busy season, right? Make sure that you know they need to take care of their busy season, and make sure you educate around them. Our most successful piece of content that we do every single year, we started out by doing it as a webinar about how to deal with busy season, and we started a little bit before busy season. We turned that into a series of webinars that we do around busy season, then we expanded from there into like an email nurture flow with like kind of like a university on how to deal with busy season, but take advantage of that. The second thing, and this is my favorite so far, is there's a very, very clear cadence, at least in international freight, for busy season sales, right? It's something that everybody tracks. And it's not so hard to track. If you have a decent sized company, you can actually see data points of how many people are signing up for your platform and how many people are actually buying. So 3 years ago, we decided we can take all of the data that we have about how busy season actually is, and we put together a freight index, where we'll basically grab all of our prices, and we'll put them up. We built this dedicated website for it called the Freightos Freight Index. And we basically reached out to every single reporter in our space in business and international freight and trade publications. And we basically said, hey, we can give you hard data about how busy this busy season actually is. And any company can do it. This doesn't need to be about international freight, right? It could be about how many visitors you have on your website. This is how busy season is. What are the cadences for when people actually end up buying marketing software or medical devices or whatever you're actually selling? You put together data around that and you leverage the fact that people are curious about how busy season is going in order to interest them in busy season, get them into you to start that sales funnel going. And this is just like one example, but we regularly pick up this data, which started during busy season. We ended up implementing on an annual basis, and literally every single week we end up walking away with like 5 or 6 articles in major publications. This is the Wall Street Journal, but we pick it up on a regular basis just by taking the data that we already had and weaponizing it a little bit. Another really interesting thing, and this really changed a lot of how we market, is better segmentation and specifically focusing on segmentation and prioritization of leads during the course of user journeys on your website. So let me unpack that a little bit. we, during the course of the year, I think most people probably end up doing this, we profile our visitors, right? When they perform specific buy intent activities, we profile them, we take their explicit activities, their implicit activities, and we start bucketing them into different buckets of how much we think they're going to spend on our website, how fast we think they'll convert. And we've gotten pretty good at it, right? So basically, we have a running scale from 1 to 10 of our lead score for users after they sign up. And different activities will give you different jumps in scores. The red line right over here is the conversion rate to actual buyer, right? So how well do they actually perform? So you can see that our 1s, 2s, and 3s, the people that have low lead scores, are really, really crappy at converting. As you get to the 6s and 7s, suddenly it starts to take off, right? So what this means is that if I know that I had a 7 come to my website in Q2, he's probably going to buy. If I had a 7 that came in Q4, when he is super busy and he has a lot of other things on his mind, but he's still taking those buy intent activities on my website, there is nothing more important than reaching out to that guy as quickly as possible. So when our sales team really, really need to crush it at leads, we change our segmentation. And we start escalating our higher quality MQLs as quickly as possible. We do a last in, first out, right? Somebody signs up. If they hit 7 or 8 very quickly, that'll get shifted to the top of the pile for our sales team. And we make sure that we hit them really, really quickly and really, really hard. The last main thing is basically shifting your messaging to super, super urgency. Again, if people are really, really busy, over here, I was really proud of these charts, so I'm just trying to overuse them a little bit. Right? If people are super, super busy, but they're still hitting that point where they need you right now, that means that they need you right now. And that means that your messaging should totally leverage that urgency. So when people come to our website, and it's the last week of peak season in international freight, which basically means they've literally missed the boat, right? There's no way that they're going to get their goods out to whatever, from China to the US on time. The only thing that they can do is international air freight instead. So we'll take that messaging and we'll understand their behavior enough to know that if they're approaching us over here, right? If they're approaching us when people are really, really, really busy, but they still need it, the product that they're looking for and the offering that they're looking for is not necessarily the same offering that somebody over here in Q2 is looking for. So if they're looking for, if you're selling a SaaS platform, like a big B2B or enterprise SaaS platform, and somebody comes and they prioritize themselves and they show that they're interested in it, one of the most important things that you can message around is rapid rollout. Right? If somebody says, I need this right now, and I'm coming here anyways during this really, really, really busy season, if you get on the phone and say, hey, we can make this happen right now, or if your messaging, if your collateral, if your emails, if your nurture flow shifts over to saying, if you need this right now, we can get this rolled out within 2 weeks if you sign the deal right now, that's going to be messaging that's way more effective than anything else. So make sure that you get in the customer mindset, and the one biggest takeaway that I would say, if you only pay attention to one thing here, is that everything right now, as soon as you get to the September point, everything becomes around understanding the user, respecting the fact that they're busy, respecting the fact that you need to create that urgency. You need to create enough of an offering if you ever want to sell during September, October, November. The marketing team needs to create enough urgency around the messaging. Change your H1 on your website to say, close this quarter with a bang. Right? Change your entire messaging to show that this is a offering that I can close for you this week or this month so that your numbers change in time for the end of the year. That's it. This deck is available on my website at buchman.co.il. As I said, start early, make your own busy season, schedule your activities intelligently around this stuff, answer their busy season needs, segment, attack, and message, and be nice to your mom because it's just the right thing to do. You can find this deck and some other things at buchman.co.il. If you're interested in quick marketing tips, again, my podcast is called Marketers and Capes. Thank you so much to Rise and to Marketing Envy for hosting this.
Any questions? Can I have one question?